ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Jim K. Ford Sens Nation podcast. And we are coming at you with, I guess, it's sort of our first post-game show recorded. But we're feeling pretty good about that particular performance. A surgical beatdown of the Toronto Maple Leafs, 5-2. Probably the score favors the Leafs when you get down to it. It was that kind of game. Yeah. With me, as always, is the coach, Greg Kennedy, not in front of the wonder wall of NHL books. I, on the other hand, am again in front of the Senators' hot stove, which I think tonight is burning brightly.
There's still books here. I'm on a different wall. I'm on the TV wall. There's still books here.
It's all good. I like that. You look like you're in an office. You got the chairman of the board behind you there. You're good to go.
Francis Albert Sinatra. There he is in a special place. Yeah. Yes, efficient win. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask about, does somebody have the nickname like a Brady Tkachuk type of a player who's slamming guys into the boards all the time, called the chairman of the boards?
John Tonelli.
I knew
John Tonelli was the original chairman of the boards. Yes.
All right. Very good. Let's get into it, though. It was a great game, and Sens fans enjoyed that. And with the loss by Boston today, that means the Senators are within 5 points of a playoff spot in the East. Could have gone very differently. Boston wins that game, Sens lose. Now you're a 4-point swing, 9 points, and it could look very bleak as we do this show today. But it steps a little bit toward legitimacy and a lot more positivity. Let's first get your thoughts of the game on Saturday night.
Yeah, pure efficiency. Just really, really, you used the word methodical, I think you used, surgical, efficient. Save percentage, you'd like it to be a little higher, but other than that, that's as thorough a beatdown as you're going to see. I watched the Leafs 2 games in the Florida swing where they lost both of them, and Steve, believe it or not, I think they looked worse in some of those Florida stretches of the 2 Florida games.
That's hard to believe.
Because they just look effing awful. I'm sorry. I apologize to any people who are insulted that I use the word effing, but there's no better way to describe it. They are absolutely god-awful tonight. They look like they don't care. They look like a team that just wants to play out the string. They look like a team that maybe wants to get the coach fired. Who knows what's going to happen in Leafville in the next week.
Yeah, that looks like a team that is done, capital D. The way they looked at the end of the second period, I don't know if I've seen the Senators look as overpowering as they did against the Leafs for a good 6-7 minute stretch in the second half of the second period. It reminded me of a boxer who's just trying to get to the end of the round, the way the Leafs looked, waiting for that bell to go. And but just, from the Sens perspective, all kinds of good. And let's begin with, for example, I just found across the board they were very, very good. The one concern, it's funny our minds go to the concerns right away, but Linus Ullmark looked really sort of sketchy. Like he looked nervous around the puck. First goal of the game on the first shot, and in fact before that, on the first shot of the game, basically, Max Domi had him beat. It was going a shot up into the top corner, but I think it was Bobby McMahon who tipped it into the stands. So he effectively let in the first goal of the game on the first shot twice, if you will. But I just didn't. I didn't like his game. I didn't like his body language. He looked maybe a little better in the third period, but the game was over by then. It was just not a convincing performance by Linus Ullmark tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we've made the comment before that he always looks so comfortable, so laid back, almost casual. And there are times when he looks like the guy playing old timers. He makes a save, and it's like when he's getting up, he's in no big rush to get up. He just looks so, okay, I'm here. It hit me. Okay, there doesn't seem to be an intensity to him at all. But that's sort of the way he is, right? Like even when he has his best games, he never really is all that intense looking. He never looks like he's sweating or working all that hard. He's a guy who relies on positioning and being in the right place at the right time and having pucks hit him. And that can tend to make you look, because you're not rushing on a position, you're not diving anywhere. Like you can really only think of 1 or 2 stops over the last 2 seasons where he was diving across to make a save. He's just an efficient netminder. He gets in the way and makes saves. So when he gives up a goal on one of those, you kind of go, oh, geez, he didn't look too lively on that one. But it's the same way he would look if he made the save anyway.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. I just find that he looked skittish in this one. It was a little like a cat going after a laser pointer, just sort of not really sure where the puck was sometimes, and some big rebounds in the game. He just didn't look certain to me. But beyond that, we shouldn't stress on the negatives, but that was one thing that popped into my head when we get into the subject matter here. Drake Batherson with a fine game, a couple of great shots there. Probably should have had the old hat trick. Had a
Yep.
big breakaway in the third period. Dylan Cozens with a couple of goals. Thomas Chabot. But there must have had to be at least 3, 4, maybe more goalposts as well. So really, I think that game, from a scoring perspective, very much favored the Leafs. That one could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, like Shane Pinto probably could have
Yeah.
had 2 or 3. I don't know how much iron he hit tonight too. Same sort of thing. He had 2 from Cousins, 2 from Batherson. Everybody involved, all 3 lines. I really liked the play of Amadio and Cousins, other Cousins, poor Cuz, with Amadio and Pinto tonight. Like another night of shutting down a top line. Like, did Austin Matthews even dress? I can't say that I noticed him all that much. Just a good, thorough, efficient win. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. Just well done all around. Good PK. The one goal was 2 seconds after the end of a PK, but for the most part, solid night. Good night in the power play, generating chances. Good 5-on-5. Good forecheck game. Good D zone coverage. Limited shots to what was it, 22, I think, total. Just a really good, efficient win.
Pinto's a bit snake bitten. There's no question
Yeah.
about that. Like, you go back to the end of November. Do you know how many goals that guy's got since the end of November?
I'm going to say it's like 4 or 5. It's really low, isn't
It's
it?
three. It's three.
Jeez,
Yeah.
wow.
So he got off to that great start in October for a time. I think he had
Yeah.
7 or 8 goals and led the entire NHL. And now, since the end of November, he's got 3 goals. He had a little injury stint in there, I think, as well. But still, you kind of expect more, particularly when you think to yourself, okay, that is a guy that really could and should be pushing Dylan Cozens for the second line center role. But it doesn't seem to be happening from an offensive perspective. Part of that is a lack of power play time and playing on that third line, which is so good from a two-way perspective. But he's just not getting the looks that a Dylan Cozens is, for example. So but that's you'd like to see him get on the scoreboard a little more. You also mentioned Michael Amadio. That was his 500th game tonight, and I thought he was very good. Tim Stützle, though, is the straw that stirs the drink for this team. My God, I can't believe I pulled out that cliche. But offensively, he wasn't one of the stars offensively tonight, but there was a point in the game, and I thought this against Detroit. I didn't think because they reported him being ill. I also remember his TSN interview with Mark Masters at the end of his Olympics, and he said he was exhausted and his body was hurting and he needed some time off, and then he was ill. He basically had, I think, 8 days off after the Olympics and then didn't practice and then went right into that first game against Detroit. Didn't he get a great game against the Red Wings? And I was worried about him against the Leafs because he got run over by his own guys a couple of times.
Yeah.
Batherson lost his footing, and Stützle goes in, ass over tea kettle, runs into the goalie. And when he went off the ice at that stage, I was like, oh, man, he's beat up and tired still. But as that game went on, maybe the virus is letting up or whatever he's got going on. But I thought in the second half of that game, Tim Stützle came to freaking life, both as a penalty killer. Did you see that movie made on Matthew Nyes, the old Spinorama? Just fantastic, and that is great to see, isn't it?
He got better and better as the game went on, Steve. And I think it played into the Senators and their stretch pass breakout, right? Like send 2 guys, take your time down low, and you got 2 guys curling, or you throw it high. And you throw it high, and you throw it high, and you throw it high. And eventually that opens up room for that low pass where either Timmy goes behind the net and picks it up, or he curls low and takes it. He's got a good head of steam going. And that sort of came as the game went on after they'd established the stretch pass and cleared out a lot of the zone for the Leaf forecheck. He had much more room to maneuver and skate and carry the puck. It just got better and better as the game went on. I agree with you.
Was that the worst offside challenge you've seen all year when the Leafs challenging that goal? That was it was basically a turnover in the neutral zone, and the Leafs ended up, spewing the puck back into their own zone. It was clear for all to see, and Batherson goes in and tucks in his second goal of the game. And for some reason, Craig Berube and the video coach team, they decided to challenge it. I think that might be, It's certainly this season's worst offside challenge. It might be the worst I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think it's the worst I've ever seen. That's for sure. I don't get it. Did they think? I gotta believe they know the rule, so they weren't doing it because they didn't know the rule. I think they were maybe doing it because they didn't think Nyes had possession of the puck, but he was the last player to touch it, and that's the only thing that matters. Right? The last guy to touch the puck, going in, going out, whichever team it is, that's all that matters when the puck crosses the blue line. So I found that strange. They're like, why would you make that decision? I'd be interested to read something. I'm sure somebody's going to ask Berube about it in his post-game presser. I'd be interested in hearing what their thought process was on doing that at that time.
My guess would be twofold. One is just full-on desperation, because they're seeing the way this game is going, and they were junk against the Florida teams, and they were junk again on Saturday night, and they're now down 4-2, and they're thinking to themselves, man, we're probably not getting 5 goals tonight. So you know what? And this is the second part. The NHL goalie interference rule is so fluid and so crazy. Hell, just challenge it. Let's see what happens. It's probably not going to work, but what the hell? We're not winning this game if the Sens take a 4-2 lead here. And sure enough, the Sens end up with a power play and extend the lead beyond that. And so it was punitive. There's still lots of time left, but that's my theory. That's the desperate level I think that the Leafs have come to based on what's happened here since the Olympics ended.
Yeah, desperation creeps in, right? Especially in Berube's mind. Like he can read the writing on the wall. He can see the way his team is playing. He can see where they're at in the standings. He knows maybe his career, his tenure in Toronto is coming to a close, and some desperation's called for. But I don't know what's dumber, the fact that the video coach would have said, "Yeah, let's do this," because the video coach has got to know the rules, or that Berube and Lalonde there on the bench talking it over and deciding to do it. Just stupid. I don't get it.
Oh, it was a good night. It was a good night. You know, whether the Sens make the playoffs or not, whether they're great or whether they're bad, it's just, just beat the Leafs. There's a little bit of that, when you beat Toronto on Saturday night in Toronto that badly, totally surgical, and you outshoot them 40-23, I think it is. I don't have my glasses on. Hang on. Yeah, 40-23. That's a very good night if you're an Ottawa Senator fan. And again, they cut Boston's lead to 5 points. We'll take a quick time out here on the program. We had a line brawl in the Battle of Ontario. We'll talk about the state of the Battle of Ontario and more coming up after these words.
Are you ready to take your Ford ownership to the next level? Introducing Ford Pass at Jim K. Ford, your passport to a world of convenience and control. Start your vehicle remotely, lock or unlock it from your smartphone, receive instant alerts about your vehicle's health, and schedule service appointments. Don't miss out on the Ford Pass revolution at Jim K. Ford, 1438 Uville Drive in Orleans, or online at jimkford.com.
At Jim K. Ford Lincoln, we say yes!
Steve, if you ever get tired of waiting in line for an oil change, you can go to Midas, make an appointment. You don't have to wait in line. You just show up whatever time you want it. They'll set up an appointment for you. Walk in, get your car done in 20 minutes, wait there for it. Maybe takes 40 minutes, but they're going to give it a good going over while it's in the shop. Check out the 5 Midas locations, midas.ca.
Welcome back to the show as we're doing this moments after the Senators took down the Toronto Maple Leafs 5-2. That's their third straight loss since the Olympics, and they are still 9 points back of Boston, which lost today. And, I got to think, is that the end of Toronto's season for sure at this point? I got to think it is.
I would think so, yeah. They've shown no signs. Look, this is a team that won their last 3 before the Olympic break. They come back from the Olympics and lost their first 3. So they're like anything you had going, any mojo you thought you had going into the Olympic break is completely wiped out. Like they're done. I think they were done a month or so ago. I think you and I both said that probably about a month ago. They're done. I can't see it. So it's time to start selling off, but they don't have a lot to sell off that they're willing to sell off because they're not moving any of the big guns and all the rest of it. I think that standard Toronto overpricing, overvaluing what they are trying to trade away. They're going to have a tough time making changes at the trade deadline this year, I think.
Well, my distaste for the Ottawa, or for the Ottawa. My disinterest, my level of hatred for the Toronto Maple Leafs So if you catch me on the right day in October, I might say to you, Toronto is done. So what I said a month ago, don't worry about that. I am saying it now, though. At this stage of the game, 9 points out, and just the way they've looked these last 3 games, they aren't going anywhere. And it wouldn't shock me to see a bunch of stuff happen between now and the trade deadline. Maybe some stuff in the the front office or behind the bench. You just never know. We've already seen Mark Savard pay a price for the Leafs scuffling this season. Maybe there's another price to be paid. You just don't know. But I want to ask you about the line brawl. It was standard operating procedure. You're getting worked over by one of your arch rivals in your building on a Saturday night in front of a national audience. You sometimes want to go out and leave a mark, and the Leafs tried to do that in it was a funky line brawl, but still most of the guys were off, squaring off, doing something. What did you think of the line brawl in the third?
Shocker, Ridley Gregg was the first player sort of involved on the Senators side.
And Stolarz got him in the playoffs, right?
Yeah. Goes to the net, takes a shot, whacks, whack. I thought it was interesting that, who was it now? Geez, now I forgot who it was. Somebody originally started fighting with Spence, and it was Domi. Domi, he had 2 fights in the same play. Right, He started fighting with, I think it was Spence,
Jensen.
And then it was Jensen. Sorry, it was Jensen, and then he ended up fighting with Sanderson. Like, come on, that's 2 fights. If what he did over here was worth a fight, then what he did over there is definitely worth a fight. I found that interesting. That's pretty cool. Like, is he just too dumb to realize that now he's with a different guy and he thought it was the same guy? I don't know, but I mean, you were expecting that kind of stuff to come, right? It's a blowout game against a team that is sucking big time. What else have they got to do except that type of crap that was going to come? It was inevitable. It probably happened earlier than we thought it was going to happen. You might have expected it to come later in the game, but it was beyond expected. You knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, leave a mark, as they say, and show you care and all that, because you know that the Toronto media would be burying them in the morning if they didn't do something to show they cared. Or right. I guess that's an attempt to show you care. I'm not sure, but it was odd because I think the way I looked at it, it was Domi on Jensen. Jensen wanted no part of him, and so he kind of turned his back to him. And so Domi, who's not a very tall player, he's basically on Jensen's back like a koala or a kid's backpack or something, trying to get the fists going and stuff. And so Sanderson saw that Jensen wanted no part of it, so he intervened. And then Domi was like, "Okay, I'll go to you." And so he was getting into it with Sanderson. My takeaway from it was, what do you have to do to get an instigator penalty? Because Domi just wanted to fight. He wanted to fight anybody. Anybody on the ice, wanted to leave that mark. I'm sure that was ingrained into him by his dad. Just do something. And so to me, that looked like, I don't know, standard textbook instigator? No?
I know. That's the problem. Because the instigator rule includes an automatic game suspension, game ejection. It used to include a game suspension, and they changed that. It really makes it difficult for a referee to make that call. Should I be tossing a guy from the game for that? But yeah, you can't get much more intentional than that. He clearly wanted to fight somebody, and he ended up fighting 2 guys. So you're right. If anything's going to be an instigator, that would be it, you'd think.
Yeah, you would. But it's the Battle of Ontario, too, so you always like a little bit of feistiness with it all. So, the Sens, it was a beatdown on the scoreboard. The shot clock, or I guess the shot count. What do you call that? Shot clock? Scoreboard?
Shot clock's a timer.
I know, but that's why I didn't want to say it, but I couldn't think of the other word.
Counter.
Shot counter, sure.
Tabulator.
So the Leafs wanted to win something, and I'm not sure they did, but it was a lot of nothing. You also had Nick Cozens and Lawton. They were squaring off at one point, and of course Ridley Gregg getting wailed on by Anthony Stolarz, who never minds wailing on Ridley Gregg like you talk about. So that was neither here nor there. But it is a battle, and it's the Battle of Ontario. But it really has kind of fallen on hard times again. We thought it was back last year. In the springtime, the 2 teams both make the playoffs, and it had been so long since both teams were good. 2004 was the last time they met in the playoffs, and then right after that, the Leafs went on this impressive run of incompetence where they missed the playoffs for the next 7 years. In grand total, in the next 17 years, they failed to win a playoff series. And then somewhere in that, Ottawa finally got bad by around 2018, and they missed the playoffs for 7 straight years. But then last spring, they both show up good in the same season. And obviously the Leafs had the better of them last spring. But it left you as a fan of the battle thinking, okay, we are in for some good, juicy hockey here for maybe the next decade. But now both teams are struggling to make the playoffs, the Leafs especially at this point, and they're 13 points worse than they were last year. The Sens, at this exact moment last year, they had 4 points fewer than they have now. So they're living up more to their end of the bargain in the battle than Toronto is. They have really slipped. Toronto was number 1 in the Atlantic Division this time last year, and now they're way out of a playoff spot. What say you about the Battle of Ontario and the state of it?
Well, part of the problem is they don't play as much as they used to, right? Like they only play every other year. They play 3, then they play 4. Then the next year it's 3, then it's 4. Is it always 4?
Always 4, except for every once in a while it was 3. It was either last year or the year before it was 3, but it's almost always 4.
When each team comes around in their division, you each get a turn every 6 or 7 years where you only play that team 3 times, right. I guess, right? So I mean, that I think factors into it. I think the personalities aren't the same, right? That Leaf team, when we were in the thick of the Battle of Ontario, it was, we all, everybody hated Matt Sundin, but there was Darcy Tucker and there was Gary Roberts and there was Travis Green, you had Brian McCabe. There was guys there that Ottawa fans just hated. Ty Domi hated the way they played. And I think that's plays into it too. The characters are completely different and they don't play as much or don't play as often. And it's a different game now. The way the game's played is completely different to those days. Now it's much more of an up-tempo, puck possession, speed game compared to what it used to be. There used to be a lot more dump and jump and grind and battle, and that kind of game just doesn't exist so much anymore in the NHL.
Yeah, I think they did a good job tonight, though. I was hating the other team. You had Domi out there. Stolarz is taking shots at Greg again. I just think it's more of the fact that they might not make the playoffs this year, and I'm a little shocked by that. I didn't think that losing Mitch Marner was a big deal, and the Leafs have also had some injuries, but I didn't think both of these teams would be at this stage of the game where they are. In Ottawa's case, like I said, they're 4 points better than last year. Part of it is though that Buffalo is the best story in hockey. That was a team that they're currently in the midst of the worst playoff drought in NHL history, not active NHL history, and somehow, some way, and they were last in the East on December 9th, and they are now rolling, I think, something along the lines of 22-5-6, and they are entered the day on Saturday in second place in the Atlantic Division. It's teams like Buffalo, along with Detroit and Boston, who all missed the playoffs last year. They've elevated, and they're now all in the playoffs, and that's why the Ottawa Senators are on the outside looking in. So again, they've more closely kept up their end of the bargain in the battle than Toronto has. The Leafs have really had the bottom drop out.
Yeah, and Montreal too. Like you've got who made it at the last second last year. Didn't they end up making the playoffs? But you've had the improvements of Montreal, Buffalo, and Detroit over last season. The fact that Tampa Bay has hung around, wow, that's impressive. The record they put up this year. Yeah. Boston, after a terrible year last year and not a great start this year, took off. You've got a lot of good teams in the Atlantic Division. And we talk about the loser point all the time. These teams play each other an awful lot in 3-point games, and the Senators stuck in there, hey, I liked our game tonight. Like you get stuck in I liked our game tonight, but we only got 1 point. That's what ends up happening, right? All these teams are that much better, and the Leafs losing Marner, slipping, and the Senators just not quite producing the way they should. You end up with 2 teams on the outside looking in, one team a little closer and looking like they might get there, but Toronto definitely looking completely out of it.
Okay, a couple of things before we wrap up here. Does Hockey Night in Canada just basically get Ron McLean to bring in his milk carton full of albums from the 70s to play the music for all their montages and things. Tonight, what do they have tonight? It was like The Boys Are Back in Town by Tin Lizzy or Thin Lizzy. I forget which it is. But it just seems like all the old references, and Ron McLean's not much older than me, so I would appreciate most of his musical choices, but I also appreciate there's some people watching this game that are under 40. Anyway, I find that hilarious.
The odd one.
Yeah. The other thing was, through that whole game, there's a pop song right now by a guy named Benson Boone. He's the one in the green satin that does that Instacart commercial with Ben Stiller, and that one airs quite a bit.
Is that guy's a real person?
Yeah, yeah, it does the flips all over the place.
Okay.
That's his claim to fame. Well, he's got a song called Electric Blue, and they played it through the entire Blue Team game against the Sens on Saturday night on CBC, and I was thinking, there's nothing electric about this blue. Anyway, that's my musical commentary for the moment.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, it's a catchy song and everything, and I appreciated that it was something from the last 45 years. But I digress. Closing it out, though, Mathieu Joseph, the former Ottawa Senator, sent to the minors. I'm a little surprised by that because I didn't mind him as a Senator. I certainly didn't like him as much as Nick Paul, but I liked his speed. He was a serviceable guy who could play on your fourth line or on your third line, and he had a couple of decent years with the Senators. I'm surprised to see him straight down in the minors. What say you?
Yeah, it took me off guard. I don't know that I've seen him play all that much this year that I could offer up a critique of his game, but obviously he's not producing to be sent down, and he's at his stage of his career in this contract. I'm sure it's a one-way deal, so he would have had to clear waivers. Interesting that nobody would. Yeah, right. So. Yeah, weird, eh? And you look back at the Nick Paul deal, and I know I saw your tweet today, a little piece you wrote on it. The only thing we need to factor into that, remember, is it's Tampa. It's a no-tax state. It's a perennial contender, Stanley Cup champion. So he probably signed for a little bit less to stay in Tampa. Nick Paul, I'm speaking of, than if he wanted to stay in Ottawa. He would have wanted 3 or more to play in Ottawa, and he ended up signing in Tampa for less than 3. But yeah, that you look back on the trade, it's not looking any better as the years continue to go by.
Yeah, it was actually 3.1, whereas Mathieu Joseph was 2.95. So it was basically around $200,000 savings. So not ideal for sure. And Mathieu Joseph, they basically, after 2 years of that 4-year contract, Pierre Dorion signed him to. Steve Stais, after 2 years, just said, yeah, we're going to send you to St. Louis, and we're getting nothing back. We're actually going to give a third-rounder to St. Louis as a sweetener. So whereas right now, Nick Paul is on LTIR, but he's been really good. He's had last 2 years have been 20 goals and 40 points, north of that. And real nice player, big body, good skater, and a homegrown guy.
He's net front guy on their number one power play when he's healthy. Did you know that? Like, Braden Point's the bumper guy. Nick Paul plays a lot of minutes on the number one power play for a really good hockey club. Good for him.
Yep. And I always like that whole develop your own guys, and then that guy gets a chance to be a star in the organization. It just seemed like they frittered him away, and it didn't seem to be something they really needed to do. And I started the show with my concerns about goaltending, and I'll leave everybody with this. Can you think of the goaltender that this team has drafted and developed and then became a star with the organization? I looked it up, and the best I could come up with was maybe Ray Emery or Brian Elliott, who was, I think, drafted in the 700th round. Yeah,
last.
Very late. Was it dead last or second last? I forget.
I believe, he's one of those two.
Yeah, and very
you're
late.
right. Well, then there was the goalie they liked so much they drafted him twice.
Yeah, that wouldn't come close to stardom. Yeah.
What was that? Schwinnard? Was that guy's name?
Yeah. They drafted him the first round 1 year, and the following year they drafted him in the second round. Second year.
Whatever. Yeah. But you're right. There has never been a homegrown stud. Draft somebody, develop this guy, and 4 years after his draft, he's your number one guy for 10 years.
Yeah.
They've never had that, ever.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Right after the Senators take care of business against the Toronto Maple Leafs 5-2, an absolute beatdown on Saturday night in Toronto, just the way I like them. And we appreciate you being here. Yeah, it's a sort of a maiden voyage of a post-game show. But we'll tell you that we want to thank some people, and that would be our title sponsor, Jim K. Ford. Thanks as well to Midas Ottawa. Check out CJRO Radio on terrestrial radio. The show airs at various times during the week. Thanks to them. And our website is sensnationhockey.com, and the hockey news is at thn.com/Ottawa. Lots of great Sens articles there, including a wrap-up of the Saturday game. Greg, enjoy the rest of your Saturday night and weekend, and we'll talk to you in our next episode.
Thanks, bud. Have a good night.